Krishna. So today we will read chapter 5, The War. Under the circumstances since 1936 up to now, I was simply speculating whether I shall venture this difficult task, and that without any means and capacity. But as none have discouraged me, I have now taken courage to take up the work. Srila Prabhupada Back to Godhead magazine. The fire in the matha broke out almost immediately. A senior disciple said that there should be one acharya who would be the spiritual successor to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati and who would perform all initiations and settle all controversies. But Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had never said that. He had never called for one acharya. Rather, he had instructed the members of the Gaudiya Math to form a governing body of 12 men and carry on a concerted effort. But that instruction was abundant, and the suggestion that there be one leader took hold. A single person instead of 12 should take charge, and now it became a rush for who. Two parties contested. Anant Vasudeva, one of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's leading preachers, was ambitious and he pressed his claim with a group of influential sannyasi supporters. Another man, Kunja Vihari, shrewdly went after the properties. He had been a leading administrator under Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, and now he claimed ownership of the palatial temple in Calcutta as well as all the other properties and assets of the India wide Gaudiya Math. Although in his will, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta had expressed his desire that his disciples select a governing board to manage all properties and funds of the Gaudiya Math. Kunja Vihari contested the will's legitimacy. He and his supporters argued that since Srila Bhakti Siddhanta had received the properties on behalf of God, he was not their rightful owner and therefore could not determine their future ownership. Thus, he and the others disputed over the legal and theological aspects of the former Acharya's position. Shortly after Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's passing away, litigation had begun. Anant Vasudeva, supported by a majority of the members of the Gaudiya Math, had claimed that he, as the next Acharya, was the owner and director of the properties. But although Kunj Vihari had only a few supporters, he defied the majority by passing his claim through lawyers in court. Kunj Vihari and his men had possession of the Chaitanya Math and the temples of Mayapur. Vasudeva's party captured other buildings. Quarreling and first fights broke out. The preaching of the Gaudiya Math stopped. Abey's inability to take part in the activities of the Gaudiya Math was suddenly in his favor. He had always been more a visitor than a member at the Math and at least externally more the Grihastha businessman than a missionary worker. This automatically put him at a distance from the fray. Of course, he was associated with the mathas in Bombay and Allahabad, but he had no managerial position, no claims to ownership, and no role in the litigation. Nor did he desire to take sides in the struggle for power. Like many of the other disciples, he was mortified to see that his spiritual master's instructions for cooperation had been disregarded and his mission thrown into a legal dispute. Abhay knew that Srila Bhakti Siddhant had wanted the leaders to work cooperatively, and so he could not sympathize with the warring factions. Both parties were an insult to Srila Bhakti Siddhant Saraswati, but he wanted to preach. Although becoming a very good English preacher was something he was meditating on more than actively doing, the Gaudiya Math would logically have been the vehicle for his preaching. He had already contributed articles to the Gaudiya Math's publications and had been working with his godbrothers at the Allahabad and Bombay centers. Naturally, he thought of serving his spiritual master in terms of serving within his spiritual master's mission. But the Gaudiya Math, which had always been known for pure, bold preaching of the message of Lord Chaitanya was now becoming known for embroiled factions. As the Gaudiya Math broke down, he was also affected. Under the present circumstances, how could he carry out his spiritual master's order to preach? Previously, the main obstacle to his preaching had been family commitments, but now the obstacles were compounded. Now he had to wait helplessly for the outcome of this struggle. What would Krishna bring about? 1938. His Bombay business diminishing, Abhay, now 42, moved back to Calcutta with his wife and family and rented a house at 6 Sita Kant Banerjee Lane. The street was but a narrow lane, lined on either side with three-story houses. His office was on the first floor, facing the street. The family lived upstairs. He rented the adjoining buildings, number 7, and on the first floor operated a small chemical laboratory manufacturing distilled water, D's pain liniment, Vimal tonic alpa, an injection for boils, and various other medicines. He also utilized a small outbuilding in the rear as part of his lab. Out from he hung a large signboard, Abhay Charan Day and Sons, displaying a picture of a mustached Abhicharan. Sometimes he would employ 2 or 3 servants to assist him, but mostly he worked alone, and he would deliver his glass jugs of distilled water to agents such as Bengal Company and Gluconet. He printed a brochure advertising Day's Pain Liniment, good for relieving gout, rheumatism, and all pains. And if one wanted to be free of recurring diseases like rheumatism and gout, Abbe's brochure directed that in addition to using Day's pain liniment, one refrained from alcohol and all sorts of drinking or intoxicating habits, and food and drink should be very simple and innocent, such as vegetables and milk. The new Calcutta business enjoyed an early success, but Abhay did not have his heart in it. It was a duty. He had to do it to maintain his family. His new acquaintances in Calcutta found him to be a devotee of God at heart, a businessman, a family man, but more concerned with writing and preaching than with business and family. Chandi Mukherjee, a neighbor from nearby Bihari Street. He was interested only in devotional activities and he did his business only to maintain the family. He didn't seem interested in the profit motive, in accumulating money or becoming a rich man. Charan Mukherjee, Abhay's next door neighbor. Abhay Charante was always a very patient listener to every illogical argument that anybody, including myself, would bring to him. Not knowing philosophy, I would illogically present so many arguments, and Mr. Day would always very patiently listen. Nothing agitated him. He was always very calm, and he taught me about God. He would speak only of Krishna. He was translating the Gita and was maintaining his business. Neighbors would often see him sitting on his cot in the front room. He would read his spiritual master's books and sometimes recite the Sanskrit shlokas out loud. He liked to discuss philosophy with anyone who came by, his family keeping mostly upstairs. Abhay would sit alone in the downstairs front room, dressed in dhoti and kurta, or sometimes a dhoti and only a vest. Often he would be at his writing, while outside the door his children played with the children of the Ganguly family who lived in the rear apartment of the same building. The neighbors lived openly in a kind of joint neighborhood family, and Abhay talked freely with the other neighbors, but of Vaishnava philosophy and only rarely of business. Mr. Ganguly found Abhay's speech scholastic and always very philosophical. Abhay was absorbed in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and even in brief conversations he would refer to Lord Krishna and to Bhagavad Gita's description of Lord Krishna as the basis of both the material and spiritual worlds. while working in his laboratory or receiving a delivery of empty bottles from the Muslim bottle merchant or going out to sell his medicine, he would be talking or thinking about God. In those days, for a person in Calcutta to be interested in God consciousness was not so unusual. Abe found even a man like Abdullah, the Muslim bottle merchant, to be very religious. One day, Abe asked Abdullah, who had once been very poor but had become rich by his business, now you have got money, so how are you going to use your money? The bottle merchant replied, my dear sir, I have an intention to construct a mosque. Meanwhile, the war of the Gaudiya Math raged on. Both factions were ill motivated and both deviated from the instructions of their spiritual master. The very act of trying to determine ownership of the properties through legal action meant that the God brothers were disobeying the express desire of their spiritual master as stated in his will. The litigation continued year after year, but the legal wrangling could not bring them together or purify them. One court ruled in favor of Anant Vasudeva, but then a higher court awarded two-thirds of the Matha's properties to Kunj Vihari and one-third to Vasudeva. Still, although Vasudeva had fewer properties, he inspired more followers. He seemed to them more intent on reviving the preaching of the Gaudiya Math. But when Vasudeva subsequently fell down from the principles of sannyasa by going off with the women, the groups broke further to pieces. Most of the sannyasis continued to maintain their principles, but many now left the jurisdiction of the two contending factions in disgust. Individuals formed their own ashramas, Gaudiya Mission, Chaitanya Gaudiya Math, and others. The unified entity of Gaudiya Math as an all India mission consisting of many temples, several presses, and hundreds of devotees working cooperatively under one leadership ceased to exist. God brothers continued to uphold the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as they had received them from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. But because they were meant to work together, they lacked their former united potency. Illusions of proprietorship and prestige had superseded the spiritual master's order, and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's cause, a worldwide movement for propagating Lord Chaitanya's teaching, collapsed. Wherever Abhay went, he seemed to attract the company of his god brothers, some followers of Sridhar Maharaj, the same Sridhar with whom he had worked in Bombay and whom he had always regarded as a good devotee and scholar, met Abhay at his place on Banerjee Lane and told this news to Sridhar Maharaj, who was then living at his own ashram in Mayapur. Sridhar Maharaj had disaffiliated himself from the factions of the Gaudiya Math, but as a sannyasi, he was still preaching and was interested in publishing Vaishnava literature. He had wanted to maintain an ashram in Calcutta, so for 20 rupees a month he rented from Abhay the four rooms on the second floor of number 7, above Abhay's chemical laboratory. Now, whenever they come to Calcutta, Sridhar Maharaj, Puri Maharaj, and Bhakti Saranga Maharaj based themselves there, staying in small separate rooms. It became a regular ashram for sannyasis and brahmacharis, and Sridhar Maharaj put a sign out front, Devananda Saraswati Math. Sridhar Maharaj's establishment of a matha in Mayapur with a branch in Calcutta was his response to the Gaudiya Math split. Like other sannyasis, he had been initiating disciples and preaching, not waiting for the outcome of the litigation with its continued appeals and counterclaims. Abhay was glad to encourage Sridhar Maharaj and the others who joined him at his little ashram. Here, Abhay and Sridhar Maharaj and his followers could remain aloof from the warring factions and together pursue their plans for spreading Krishna consciousness. The sannyasis cooked in their separate kitchen, performed their puja, and held morning and evening kirtanas and lectures. Abhay remained with his family, taking his own meals and performing his own puja, but he often went to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam with Sridhar Maharaj. From his roof, Abhay could see the towering steeple of his spiritual master's building, the Gaudiya Mutt of Bagh Bazar, its ownership now contested by bitter factions. Abhay would often accompany Sridhar Maharaj and his assistants at preaching programs, where he would play the mridanga, and when Sridhar Maharaj fell ill, Abhay led the other devotees on preaching engagements, performing kirtan, playing mridanga, and giving lectures on the Bhagavatam. Sridhar Maharaj. We did not see Abhay as working very hard for making money, nor did he seem very rich or to have a lot of liquid funds. He was attracted more to the spiritual side of affairs than to his family affairs. He never discussed business prospects with me, whether the business was up or down, or whether he was planning to do this or that. Monetarily, he did not have sufficient funds for giving any to the mission. Abhay began to think seriously about writing Vaishnav literature. His spiritual master had seemed very pleased and had told the editor of the Harmonist, whatever he writes, publish it. Business profits, if he could somehow expand them, could go for printing books in English, as his spiritual master had said, if you ever get money, print books. Certainly the Gaudiya Mutt was not going to do it. Kunj Vihari had sold Bhakti Siddhant's printing presses to offset his legal expenses. No, Abhay would have to continue on his own, maintaining his business and simultaneously trying to write and publish. And that was also the prescription of Srila Bhakti Siddhant. It is better that he is living outside your company. When the time comes, he will do everything himself. It was in 1939 that Abhay wrote Introduction to Gita Upanishad. It was a short piece, but it signaled his intention to take on the task of one day translating Bhagavad Gita into English with commentary. Of course, there were already many commentaries in English, but most of them had been written by impersonalists or others who had not delivered the original spirit of the Gita, the spirit of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, hearing Bhagavad Gita directly from Lord Krishna. Abhay knew, however, that he could present Bhagavad Gita in the proper spirit by writing an English commentary based on the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and the disciplic succession. So he began. Whenever he could make time, he would write. Although a strict grammarian could find fault in his English composition, his meaning was always clear. In his introduction, Abhay reflected on the time when, as a young schoolboy, he had attended a lecture, Vidyaratan, the jewel of education. The theme of the lecture had been that God does not exist and could not exist. If there were God, he would certainly have appeared on earth to put an end to all religious rivalry. But since God had not obliged man in this way, we should banish all thought of his existence from our minds. The audience, Abhay explained, consisting only of so many young boys, did not delve deeply into the subject matter of the lecture, yet the majority, impressed by the arguments, carried away lofi ideas of godlessness and thus became agnostics at home. Abhay had not been satisfied with the agnostic conclusion because because I had been trained by my father to be engaged in the worship of Shri Shri Radha Govind. But as a result of the Vidyaratan lecture, I was experiencing some mental conflict between agnosticism and the existence of Godhead. Later, having heard from his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhant, Abhay understood that the personality of Godhead exists in every sphere of activity, but we do not have the eyes to see him. Abhay wrote, even if the Lord personally manifests himself on earth, the quarreling mundaners will not stop their fighting and look upon Godhead or his representative due to ignorance. This is the birthright of the individual soul by the grace of God. Bhagavad Gita is the true jewel of education, and in the Gita, Lord Krishna declares to the fighting people on earth, Here I am, do not quarrel. The agnostic who had spoken of the jewel of education had been blinded by the jewel and therefore could not see and appreciate the personality of Godhead. Thus he had gone on to convince others to become so called jewels also. Following his spiritual master, Abe displayed an aggressive spirit for confronting all opponents of pure theism. In responding to his spiritual master's order to develop into an English preacher, Abe was not simply making neutral, scholarly presentations. He was willing and ready to fight, whether against modern agnostics or Vaishnavism's old traditional enemy, Mayavad impersonalism. Although few scholars taught the way of surrender to Lord Krishna as espoused in Bhagavad Gita, almost all respected Bhagavad Gita as presenting the essence of all knowledge. The Gita, therefore, was the perfect vehicle for confronting those who misrepresented God and religion. The Gita was a challenge to the agnostics, apotheosists, anthropomorphists, impersonalists, henotheists, pantheists, and absolute monists. Although there were already more than 600 commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, they had been written by persons with an inner hatred for the personality of Godhead, and therefore they were imperfect. Such envious persons, Abhay wrote, have no entrance into the real meaning of Bhagavad Gita, inasmuch as a fly cannot enter into the covered jar of honey. Abe described Indian culture as an almost impassable ocean due to its depth of thought and apparent mixtures of conclusions. But in this book, Abe declared, I will establish that Krishna is the absolute personality of Godhead by referring to the available records of scriptures, which are the recorded history of Indian culture and thought. The sannyasis at 7 Banerjee Lane were impressed by the scope of Abe's thought and intentions, as it was customary to award a title to an especially worthy Vaishnava according to his qualities. Bhakti Sarang Goswami wanted to confer upon Abhay the title Bhakti Siddhanta. Sridhar Maharaj, however, thought it inappropriate to give Abhay the same title as the spiritual master, and he asked that Abhay's title be changed to Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti meaning devotion and Vedanta meaning the end of knowledge. Abhay was grateful. The title combined the devotion of religion with the scholarship of the most rigorous philosophy as passed down by the scholarly followers of Lord Chaitanya. He appreciated the sincere gesture of his god brothers and accepted the title as a further commitment to his spiritual path of preaching Krishna consciousness. Abhay continued regularly associating with Sridhar Maharaj and discussing with him Srimad Bhagavatam. Abhay encouraged him to preach widely, although Sridhar Maharaj was admittedly more the scholar and rather shy about going out and preaching. On several occasions, Abhay tried to convince Sridhar Maharaj to go with him and charge Gandhi and Nehru as to why they were not following the principles of Bhagavad Gita. Another fruit of the spiritual association at 7 Banerjee Lane was a book called Prapanna Jivanamrit, compiled by Sridhar Maharaj, a collection of verses from various Vaishnav scriptures, including excerpts from the works of Rup Goswami. It was divided into 6 chapters according to the 6 divisions of surrender. Abhay, along with the sannyasis of the Devanand Saraswati Mutt, financed the publication. Thus, it was published as a joint effort by friends. Hare Krishna. So, we will stop here and read the rest of the part in next session. Hari Bol.